My name is Eric Daniels, and I can tell you the exact moment my marriage began to unravel. It was on page 27 of a manuscript. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I was helping my wife Olivia's best friend, Marla, carry a box of her self-published novels into our garage for her book club event, when a loose stack of papers fell out of the top. I bent down, gathered them, and paused. My name was right there. Not literally. The character's name was Evan, but Evan was also a mild-mannered, recently balding father of two, with a growing paunch and a quiet love of grilled salmon and indie documentaries. Evan, like me, worked in IT. Evan, like me, had 2 kids, a moody teenage daughter and a perpetually sticky son obsessed with dinosaurs. And Evan, unlike me, or so I desperately hoped, had a wife who spent her Tuesday nights at Pilates, but was really writhing atop a parking attendant named Rico in the back of a Honda Civic. I blinked. I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. Because the Honda Civic had come up before. Because Olivia did go to Pilates. Because she did smirk every time I asked how class was. I read on. Page 28. Page 29. The novel wasn't subtle. The wife character, Vanessa, was described as a woman of dangerous appetites. She had a rotating carousel of lovers, most with jobs that required name tags and forearms. She had lines like, "My husband thinks soy sauce is spicy. Rico thinks I taste like sin. I wish I was making that up. I wish I could have laughed it off. Called Marla a pervert with a flair for drama and gone back to fixing Lily's science fair volcano. But I couldn't. Because the details were too real. The lines too sharp. Too specific. This wasn't fiction. This was Olivia's diary with better punctuation. That night, I lay in bed beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, wondering which of her snores were real and which were just alibis. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. I kept seeing words on a page. A line from chapter 6, Vanessa loved the lies. They made her feel alive. Her husband's confusion was like a perfume she wore just for fun. The next morning, our daughter Riley asked me why my face looked like a sad balloon someone sat on. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But something had shifted. A quiet storm was building under the roof of our suburban split level. The book had opened something I wasn't ready for. And I had no idea how many chapters were left. I met Olivia at a wedding. Not ours, someone else's. She was the maid of honor, I was the guy who tripped on the aisle runner during the processional and nearly took out a row of folding chairs. She laughed. Loudly. The kind of laugh that made the bride wince and the groom smile. She said I looked like a cartoon duck in a suit. I said she looked like the storm that would ruin the reception and somehow make it better. She told me she liked men who couldn't dance but tried anyway. I told her I was one of those men. 6 months later, we were married. I used to think love was about alignment, shared goals, matching temperaments, mutual sacrifice. Olivia taught me that love was more like static electricity, a sudden spark, unpredictable, often harmless, sometimes not. She was the most alive person I'd ever met. She once dyed her hair red at 2 a.m. because a song on the radio felt like red. She couldn't pass a farmer's market without buying 3 things she didn't need and 1 thing she didn't recognize. She wore green a lot. Said it made her feel witchy. She liked eyeliner that looked like it belonged in a music video. Her hair was dark, long, and always slightly tangled, like it had been through something thrilling. She had a tattoo of a typewriter on her thigh, which I didn't know about until our honeymoon. She said it was for the stories I haven't told yet. She loved jalapeno kettle chips and mango smoothies. She hated cilantro, slow walkers, and when people spelled definitely as defiantly. She called me button when she was feeling affectionate, man-child when she wasn't. She always danced while brushing her teeth. Never folded laundry. Lost her phone weekly. And she wrote. God, did she write? In the margins of bills, on receipts, in journals, on napkins. Her laptop was her altar. When we were dating, I used to read her short stories out loud while she paced behind me like a nervous playwright. They were good. Funny, sharp, a little dark. She always said fiction was just real life with better editing. I didn't think much of it when Marla, her best friend since freshman year and a walking thesaurus of gossip, started asking Olivia for feedback on her novel. "You're my muse," Marla said once, winking. Olivia had grinned and said, "Just don't make me boring." I should have seen it then. Should have paid closer attention. But life got loud. We had kids. First came Riley, now 15, all sarcasm and smudged eyeliner, who texts in memes and thinks everything I say is either cringe or wrong. Then Jonah, our little tornado of chaos, 8 years old and somehow allergic to everything except peanut butter and mischief. He builds cities out of cereal boxes, talks to ants, and once tried to marry our Alexa speaker. They adore their mother. She's the sun in their solar system. When she walks into a room, Jonah lights up like a Christmas tree. Riley, well, she rolls her eyes and says, "What now, Queen Olivia?" But secretly, she hangs on her mother's every word. Our home is a patchwork of chaos and comfort. Soccer cleats in the hallway. Half-finished science projects on the dining table. Olivia's coffee cups in places they don't belong, the windowsill, the laundry basket, once even the mailbox. She says inspiration hits her in strange places. I used to think she just lived loudly. Now I wonder if it was guilt, or restlessness. Or boredom. I can't tell anymore. Our friends always said we were that couple. The fun ones. The ones who made marriage look like a good idea. Olivia would host themed dinner parties where no one ate what I cooked, but everyone loved the playlist she made. She gave toasts like she was born holding a microphone. She made people feel seen, even if she forgot their names 5 minutes later. And now? Now I watch her from across the kitchen and wonder if she's composing another scene in her head. If I'm in it. If I'm the joke. Or worse, the guy who doesn't know the joke's already on him. Because the woman I married, wild, unpredictable, larger than life, is also the woman in Marla's book. The one with the lovers, the lies, the twisted grin and the insatiable need for more. And suddenly, I'm not sure if I'm the man she chose or just the one she settled for when the music stopped. It started small. A smirk at dinner when I brought up a coworker's birthday party. A dismissive wave of the hand when I asked if we were still doing date night this week. A tone, light, clipped, like every word out of my mouth had to audition for her attention. "Sorry," Olivia said one night, stirring her soup. "I just feel like we've been having the same conversation for 10 years. I looked up. "Which conversation?" She shrugged. "All of them." And just like that, the air shifted. Like someone had cracked open a window in the middle of winter. I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. But the signs came faster after that. She stopped looking me in the eye when we talked. Laughed a little too hard when her phone buzzed. Wore perfume to Coffee with Marla, but left it untouched for my birthday dinner. One Tuesday, she came home humming. Not the Olivia hum I used to love, the post-painting, post-writing, post-red wine kind of hum. This was different. This one had a rhythm to it, like music she couldn't shake off. I asked how Pilates was. She said it was transformational. I said, "Really? That good?" She smiled, dreamy-eyed, and said, "I forgot how good it feels to move." To move. As in a way. Later that week, I found a note on the fridge, scribbled hastily in her handwriting, wedged between Jonah's drawing of a flamingo and Riley's orthodontist reminder. "Gone to write. Don't wait up." She never used to disappear without a goodbye. Never left the kids' bedtime stories hanging in the air. Riley noticed too. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked, "Is Mom mad at you?" "No," I said too quickly. "Why would you think that?" She rolled over. "Because she doesn't look at you like she used to. And she sings in the car again. She only sings when she's falling for someone." I froze. "What do you mean falling?" She shrugged, already pulling the blanket over her face. "That's what she told me once. Before she got with you." The room felt too warm. Or too cold. I couldn't tell. I went downstairs and found Olivia on the couch, flipping through Marla's latest draft. She laughed under her breath and muttered something about that scene in the yoga studio. I asked, gently, "Do you think Vanessa, the main character, is meant to be you?" She didn't look up. "I think Marla's just projecting. Or fantasizing." I pressed. "The details are oddly specific." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were sharp, like knives polished with humor. "Are you jealous of a fictional character, Eric?" I didn't answer. Because I was. Not of the character, really, but of whoever was living behind her mask. I started reading more of the manuscript when she wasn't around. Every night after she fell asleep beside me, her back turned, I'd scroll through the PDF on my tablet. My hands would shake, but I kept reading. There was a chapter, chapter 12, The Game, that left me cold. In it, Vanessa meets a man named Nick at a bookstore. He wears flannel. Orders a macchiato. Teases her about the Hemingway section. They flirt. She touches his wrist and feels a current run through her. They sneak off to his truck. It's quick. It's reckless. And it's our story. That was how we met. The flannel. The coffee. The Hemingway joke. Word for word. But in Marla's book, I wasn't the husband. I was a fling. A footnote. A way station on Vanessa's road to self-discovery. That's when the jealousy hit me, hard and sour. Not for the man in the truck. But for the version of me that had been reduced to a single spark in a woman's wildfire. I didn't tell Olivia I read that chapter. I didn't tell anyone. But the next morning, I burned breakfast. Forgot to pack Jonah's lunch. Snapped at Riley for leaving her headphones on the floor. When Olivia asked if I was okay, I said, "Fine." When she kissed my cheek, I didn't turn my head. That night, in bed, she sighed and said, "You've been sulking." I said, "Have I?" She rolled over, her back to me again. "Maybe write your own damn book." The words were sharp, offhand, and just real enough to leave a bruise. I started checking her location. It was a quiet kind of madness, the kind that slides into your routine like an extra step in tying your shoes. Harmless, at first. Olivia had shared her location with me years ago when we were still pretending we'd never keep secrets. For safety, we said. Now I watched that blinking dot move like it was a lie in motion. Thursday nights were the worst. The Pilates class she supposedly attended didn't even show up on the studio's calendar anymore. I checked. Twice. Olivia didn't know that I had called, pretending to be a new student. "Oh, we dropped that class 2 months ago," the receptionist chirped. "No one signed up except one lady, Olivia, I think her name was." She stopped coming. Stopped coming. But she still left the house every Thursday in her navy leggings and oversized hoodie, gym bag slung over her shoulder like some kind of camouflage. And the blinking dot would end up, nowhere. Not the studio. Not Marla's apartment. Just blank spots near gas stations, strip malls, the back lots of office parks. The kinds of places with flickering lights and secrets in tinted windows. Once, I followed her. I told the kids I was going to grab milk. Jonah didn't look up from his coloring book. Riley raised an eyebrow. "We have 2 gallons, she muttered. "I'll get chocolate," I said. "You like chocolate." Olivia had left 20 minutes earlier. I drove the route I'd memorized from her location history and found her car parked behind an unlit building that looked like it hadn't been rented since the Bush administration. Her car was warm. Running. But empty. I didn't knock. I didn't even get out. I just sat there in my car, watching the steam rise from her tailpipe and wondering what kind of woman cheats on her husband with a man in an abandoned dentist's office. Wondering what kind of man I had become, crouching in a sedan, hand gripping the wheel like it could anchor me. The next morning, she was cheerful. Too cheerful. She made pancakes. Kissed me on the neck. Said, "You look tired, babe. You should try yoga." I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or say tell me who he is. Instead, I buttered my pancake, poured syrup, and nodded like a man who hadn't sat in the dark watching his marriage rust from the inside. The kids weren't blind. Jonah started asking questions I couldn't answer. Why doesn't Mom come to my games anymore? Why does she always smell like a different perfume? Why did she say you're not a listener? And Riley? She stopped asking. She just withdrew. Wore headphones all the time. Drew angry women in her sketchpad, eyes too wide, mouth sewn shut. One of the sketches looked like Olivia. One looked like me. It was around then that Marla dropped off the second draft of her book. I found it in the mailbox, no note, just a sticky tab on chapter 17. I knew I shouldn't. But I read it. Devoured it like a man looking for a bullet with his name on it. Vanessa, Olivia's mirror, had taken a lover named Shane. Tall. Older. Hands like firewood and a voice like whiskey. He met her in a used bookstore, gave her a book of poetry with his number scrawled in the margins. They met weekly. Thursdays. In a building that used to be a dentist's office. I slammed the manuscript shut. My hands shook. She wasn't even bothering to hide it anymore. She was publishing it. That night, I lost it. My first real breakdown. It wasn't a scream, or a punch in the wall, or some cinematic fit of rage. It was quieter. More pathetic. I cried into a pile of laundry. Just sat on the hallway floor, Riley's hoodie in my lap, and sobbed. I didn't even know what triggered it. Maybe the scent of Olivia's perfume on the sleeve. Maybe the memory of when she used to fold my shirts and kiss the collar. Maybe just the weight of carrying a love that didn't want to be carried anymore. When Olivia came home that night, I pretended to be asleep. She smelled like eucalyptus and wine. Whispered something I didn't catch. In the darkness, I whispered back, "Who is he?" She froze. Silence bloomed like a bruise. Then she turned over and said, "Go to sleep, Eric." Just like that. Like my question was a gnat. Like I was a child who needed quieting. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt hate. Not violent. Not loud. Just the slow, creeping kind. The kind that wraps itself around love like ivy, until you can't tell one from the other. The confrontation didn't come in candlelight. There was no carefully staged dinner, no wineglass shatter, no thunder rolling behind our window like some divine sound effect. It came in daylight. Brutal, ordinary, sharp-edged daylight. It started because of Riley. She was supposed to be at a sleepover. But she came home early, furious because her friend posted a picture of them all watching a movie she hadn't been invited to vote on. Teenage betrayal. I heard the front door slam, her backpack hit the floor, and then her voice, cutting, high, too loud. "Why are you always whispering to people who aren't Dad?" I was in the kitchen, halfway through rinsing a mug. I didn't move. Olivia, lounging on the couch with her phone glowing blue in her hand, looked up slowly, like she'd just been pulled from another world. "What are you talking about?" she asked, not unkindly, but with that too-practiced tone that says she's already preparing her exit. "You think we don't see you texting at night?" I literally saw his name. Olivia stood up, suddenly all motion and control. That's enough. Who's Shane? Riley snapped. Is he real, or just a character from your book? Because I can't tell anymore. The air left the room. Olivia turned pale. And I, stupid, cowardly, wounded, walked in from the kitchen holding a dripping mug like it was going to protect me from what came next. She knows, I said softly. Olivia stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again. You've been reading the book. Only the parts where I get replaced. Riley's face twisted. Wait, it's real. I didn't answer. Neither did Olivia. Jonah came down the stairs then, barefoot and holding a toy dinosaur in one hand. Why is everyone yelling? He asked, blinking. And that's when I lost it. Not the slow breakdown like last time, not the private unraveling in a pile of laundry. This time, I erupted. You want to talk about real, Olivia? Let's talk about real. About Thursdays that don't exist. About Pilates classes that were cancelled months ago. About lipstick that smells like someone else's cologne. Eric, she said, low, warning. No. I've been quiet. I've been good. I let you hum and smirk and float through this house like you're the only one who gets to rewrite the story. But it's not fiction anymore, is it? She stepped closer. I never meant for it to go this far. Riley scoffed. You wrote about it. In detail. That's not. Olivia looked around the room, like she was searching for a version of herself she could defend. It was supposed to be private. A way to process. You're not processing, I said, voice trembling. You're publishing. You're casting us like we're extras in your fantasy. I'm not the villain, she snapped. I'm the one who's been invisible for 15 years. Invisible? My laugh was a crack in the ceiling. You're the center of this house. You orbit through rooms like a planet with your own weather system. None of us can breathe without you noticing. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. You think this life is small, I went on, but it's the only one we have. Riley's braces. Jonah's nightlights. Grocery lists. Bills. Breakfasts. All of it, built around you. And you turned it into a subplot. I was suffocating, she whispered. Then you should have said so. You should have told me before I found our marriage between the pages of someone else's trashy novel. Riley covered her mouth. Jonah started crying. I took a step back. The shame came fast. Heavy. I didn't want to be the mom who gave up her dreams, Olivia said. I didn't want to wake up at 40 and realize I'd disappeared. So you made a version of you that could cheat and lie and laugh about it in front of her children? I didn't know they'd read it. You didn't care if they did, I said. That was it. The silence that followed was bigger than all the shouting. Jonah sniffled. Mom, are you going to leave? She turned to him, her whole body softening. No, baby. No, I just. But the words didn't come. Because we all knew. This was the page we wouldn't turn back from. That night, Olivia slept in Riley's room. Not because Riley wanted her to, but because I locked our bedroom door. I don't even remember doing it. I just couldn't let her lie beside me like nothing had happened. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her move around the house, the creak of the floorboards, the soft hum of a nightlight, the shutting of a door that sounded like an ending. And maybe, in a way, it was. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the tense, watchful quiet that had taken over the house for weeks, but a deeper kind. A stillness that felt less like fear and more like the absence of performance. Olivia had gone to her sister's in Vermont. Packed a small suitcase. Didn't ask for help. Didn't say goodbye the way a wife does, just the way someone who used to be a wife might. She told Riley, I need space to think. Told Jonah, you didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Told me, nothing. And yet, the silence she left behind spoke volumes. It filled our home like air after a long storm. The first morning without her, I expected everything to collapse. But it didn't. Jonah still asked for waffles. Riley still sighed when I couldn't find her second favorite hoodie. The world, against all logic, kept moving. That hurt more than I expected. I thought I'd fall apart. Instead, I did the dishes. I vacuumed. I cleaned the fridge. I folded towels, badly, and organized Riley's pencils while she side-eyed me like I was invading a sacred rite. Jonah asked me to help him build a cardboard volcano. We spilled glue. We made a mess. We laughed. Somewhere in the middle of the day, Riley said, without looking up from her phone, it's kind of nice without all the sighing. I didn't respond. But I knew exactly what she meant. The air was lighter. And that, too, was a kind of grief. I started sleeping again. Not well, but real sleep. The kind where your body finally gives in. The nightmares came first, of course, Olivia standing at the end of the hallway, holding that manuscript like a torch, watching me burn. But over time, they faded. Replaced by dreams of quieter things. Of dinners that didn't end in sarcasm. Of Jonah's hand in mine. Of Riley sketching in the sunlight instead of behind a closed door. I deleted the manuscript from my tablet. I threw away the printed copy. But I kept one line, ripped from the book, scribbled on the back of a receipt Olivia had used as a bookmark. It wasn't the lies that undid her. It was the hunger for more, always more, like love was something you could only hold once you set it on fire. I taped it to the inside of my desk drawer. Not out of spite. Not out of sentimentality. Just as a reminder. I started running again. Not far. Just enough to feel wind in my lungs, to sweat out something I couldn't name. I passed the same neighbors, the same maple tree that had stood outside our house for 10 years. Funny how you can live with something that long and only start seeing it after everything else breaks. Riley began talking to me more. It wasn't sudden. It was in pieces. She'd come into the kitchen while I cooked and say things like, she used to hum this song, or, do you think she's really alone out there? I always answered the same way, I don't know. But she's still your mom. Riley's voice cracked once, just barely. Yeah. I wish I didn't care. Jonah was harder to read. He made a list of the things he wanted to tell Olivia when she came back, how he got better at drawing T-Rex claws. How the school nurse said he was brave for pulling out his own loose tooth. How he didn't cry when he scraped his knee. He taped the list to the fridge. A week after she left, Olivia called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was brittle, measured. She said she was getting help. That she was writing something new. That she wasn't sure what came next, but she wanted to try again, not with fiction, not with fantasy, but with honesty. I didn't delete the message. I also didn't call back. Because I didn't know yet what forgiveness looked like. I didn't know if I wanted it. But I did know this, I could live without the story she was trying to write for me. I was learning to write my own. One night, a few days later, Riley came downstairs and handed me her sketch pad. You're in this one, she said, a little embarrassed. I flipped through it. There I was, me, with tired eyes, holding Jonah's hand as he pointed toward a horizon made of cardboard volcanoes and messy stars. Riley had drawn Olivia too, smaller, distant, walking toward a house with lights in the window. She hadn't drawn anyone crying. Just people in motion. And in her version, I wasn't standing still. I used to think betrayal would feel like an explosion. I imagined a blast, loud, violent, unforgettable. I thought the day I learned my wife didn't choose me would mark a hard line in the timeline of my life. Before. After. But it didn't happen like that. It happened slowly. Like a door closing by inches. A hand slipping from yours, not in anger, but in absence. And when I finally realized she was gone, emotionally gone, I wasn't standing in ruins. I was just standing in a room where I wasn't seen anymore. It's strange what survives. Olivia's shoes are still by the door. Her favorite mug is still in the cupboard, the one that says plot twist in gold cursive. The kids still mention her, sometimes bitterly, sometimes hopefully, sometimes both in the same breath. And me? I've changed. But not in the way I expected. I didn't become colder. I didn't grow bitter. I didn't swear off love or start buying whiskey in bulk like some midlife cliché. No, what I did was, slower. Deeper. I started noticing myself again. There were things I hadn't seen in years. The way I always hold my breath before opening the mailbox, like it might bite. How I hum when I make eggs. How I always feel most alive when I'm teaching Jonah something, how to tie a knot, how to ask better questions, how to sit in silence without needing to fill it. I stopped waiting for someone to narrate my story. Because that's the thing Olivia never understood. Love isn't a plot. It isn't about drama or arcs or the thrill of being chased. Love is the quiet decision to stay. To build. To carry. Even when no one's watching. Especially then. Olivia wrote herself into a novel to feel real again. I get that now. I don't excuse it. But I understand it. She felt invisible and so she created a version of herself that was too loud to ignore. But somewhere in the noise, she forgot the rest of us were still here. I spent years making space for her voice. Now I'm learning to listen to my own. Riley's still drawing. She's planning to submit her portfolio to an art school. I told her I'd drive her to every interview, even if it means missing work. She raised an eyebrow and said, "You miss a deadline?" I told her, "You're the better investment." Jonah asked me the other day if people can fall back in love. I said yes. Then he asked, with the same person. I didn't answer that one. He's too young for half-truths. But here's my whole truth. I still love Olivia. Not the Olivia in Marla's book. Not the one in the yoga pants, or the one who hums when she lies, or even the one who left without asking if she could. I love the girl I met at that wedding, the one who laughed too loud and made fun of my dancing. But loving someone doesn't mean you keep them. Sometimes love means letting them become who they are. Even if that person doesn't fit in your life anymore. And me? I've stopped auditioning for a part in someone else's story. I'm not the heartbroken husband. I'm not the fool. I'm not the steady placeholder she wrote into the margins of her life. I'm Eric Daniels. I get up early and make too much coffee. I run slow laps around our block and wave at the same grumpy neighbor every morning. I buy flowers for no one and keep them on the table anyway. I help my kids with their math homework even though I hate fractions. I listen more. I speak up more. And for the first time in a long time, I like the man who looks back at me in the mirror. That might be the real twist. Not that she left. But that I stayed. Stayed with myself. Sat in the silence. Lived through the ache. And still found joy waiting on the other side. Because sometimes, the story you thought was ending, is just the part where the author changes.